For over 200 years, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein has absolutely haunted us. It's this incredible story of a brilliant scientist and the life he so horrifically creates. But if you look past the horror, there's this deep psychological wound at its core, and it all boils down to one single timeless question. Okay, let's really get into this. Because while people have been debating this for centuries, there's a modern psychological theory that gives us a startlingly clear answer. And what it does is it completely reframes this classic story. Suddenly, it's not a monster movie anymore. It's one of the most profound developmental tragedies ever written. So, to really get to the heart of what went so terribly wrong between Victor and his creation, we need to look at it through a modern lens. This isn't just about literary criticism, not really. It's about understanding a fundamental human need, a need that was tragically, catastrophically denied. Now, we could go down the rabbit hole of psychoanalysis and try to get lost inside Victor Frankenstein's ambitious, guilt-ridden mind, but instead, we're going to use something called attachment theory to look at something far more fundamental, the relationship itself, that critical bond between a creator and his creation that was broken from the very first breath. So, what even is attachment theory? Well, to put it simply, it's all about how those crucial bonds we form with our primary caregivers right at the beginning of our lives end up shaping our entire emotional world. It's kind of like the blueprint for how we learn to connect with other people. And in this story, that blueprint was just shattered. All right, so within this big idea of attachment theory, there's a specific diagnosis that honestly feels like it was written for Frankenstein's creature. It perfectly captures his volatile, tragic behavior, and it gives a clinical name to all of his suffering. It's called disorganized attachment, and this is a really severe form of developmental trauma. It happens when the one person who is supposed to be your safe harbor, your caregiver, is also the source of your greatest fear. Victor rejected the creature from the first moment of his existence, creating this deep, inescapable psychological paradox. Your source of life is also your source of terror. And this brings us to a really powerful way to think about it, the broken compass. You see, a compass is supposed to guide you to a fixed, safe point. But the creature's compass, it's broken. Victor is both his starting point and his greatest tormentor. So the creature is fundamentally drawn toward the very storm that's destroying him, because that storm is the only landmark he has ever known. And here's the thing, this isn't just some abstract theory. We can actually see the symptoms of this broken compass, this incredibly toxic bond, playing out in the creature's most baffling actions all throughout the novel. Let's start with our first piece of evidence, which is a moment that, on the surface, makes absolutely no sense. It's this bizarre dynamic that unfolds during that final, desperate chase across the Arctic. Think about this for a second. Victor is hunting the creature with one goal, to kill him. And yet, as they're crossing this frozen wasteland, the creature is leaving food and clues for Victor, basically keeping him alive. Why? Why would he do that? Because it's not a simple chase. It's this desperate pathological need to keep his primary attachment figure, his abuser, alive and close. He just cannot bear to be truly alone. Okay, our second clue is the creature's most monstrous act, the murder of Victor's bride, Elizabeth. But if we look at it through the lens of their toxic bond, this isn't just simple revenge. Oh no, it's something far more calculated and, frankly, far more intimate. Which brings us to a really crucial question. If the creature just wanted to end his suffering, if all he wanted was revenge, why didn't he simply kill Victor, the source of all his pain? Because the goal was never to sever the bond. The goal was to inflict the most profound psychological pain imaginable on his caregiver. This act of supreme cruelty wasn't about ending a life. It was about locking them together in shared misery, forever binding them together in torment. It just brilliantly illustrates the warped dependency of their relationship. So when we put all these pieces together, you can trace this clear and absolutely devastating chain of events. You can actually see how one single moral failure just snowballed into a philosophical catastrophe. It's like a set of dominoes, right? It all starts with the moral crime, Victor's abandonment of his child. That act directly causes the developmental trauma, this profound wound of disorganized attachment. And then that trauma, after being kicked around by a cruel and rejecting world, eventually hardens into a philosophical weapon, this deep, vengeful bitterness against his creator and all of humanity. So, the bottom line is this: the creature we see at the end of the novel is not a monster born from some innate evil. His monstrosity is the tragic and, frankly predictable result of a deep wound inflicted at the very moment of his creation. He wasn't born a monster. He was meticulously made one by the absence of love.
And that leaves us with a question that echoes far beyond the pages of a 200-year-old book. It asks us to think about the fragile nature of our own psychological maps and the devastating consequences for any of us when our very first compass is broken.